All right, so for a simple T shape here with the measurements that we have above, what we need to do is we need to actually take this shape and we need to divide it into smaller shapes that we can figure out pretty easily, right? There's not really an easy formula for finding the centroid location for just a T, right? But if we break it into two rectangles, well, then we can figure that out, all right? So what I'm going to do is break this into two shapes, and I'm just going to slice it across right here. I'm going to say that the bottom one is shape 1, and that the top one here is shape 2. Okay? It wouldn't matter if you wanted to make it shape the other way around. It doesn't matter. It's just for my purposes. So as I'm going through the math, I can keep track of that. Okay? Now, if you remember from the PowerPoint, we had this formula: the sum of our yi times ai is divided by the sum of the areas. Okay? So we're going to apply that. But we have to go through and find the pieces and then put them together as we go. So what I like to do is I create this chart. Right? The first thing we find is our y's for each shape. Then we find the area for each shape. And then we do the multiplication, just like it says here in the formula, y times a. And we get that answer. Okay? So it's kind of like the first steps we take. All right, so yes, sir. Well, it's x like multiplication. So y times a. Okay. All right. So for shape 1, we'll draw on my reference line. Right. My reference line is basically the Cartesian coordinates. Right. I stick this down into that system, and you can see that this part of the t doesn't really touch, but this part up here and this part down here actually touch the reference line. Right. So if I'm looking in the y direction, meaning from the x up, I need to find what half of my shape would be for shape 1. So that would be like the center of that triangle, right? Or excuse me, the center of that rectangle. So for shape 1, what would half of my height be there? For 30, right? So I go down here and I say, okay, I've got 30. Okay? Now, here's the tricky part. For shape 2, we need to find half of its height. So what is half of shape 2's height? 10, right? But what we have to factor in is the distance that the bottom of that shape is from the reference line, right? Because if that rectangle was 100 feet above the reference line, it makes a huge difference than if it's only a foot above the reference line as far as the overall centroid location. So we're going to take half of this top shape, which was 10, and we're going to add whatever the distance is back to the reference line. So we get 60 plus 10, and we end up getting, for our y location up here, is 70. Did that make sense? That right there was the most complicated thing we're going to do. All right? Just making sure we add the distance to the reference line and then half the shape. Now, why didn't we add the distance to the reference line on the shape 1? Yeah, the distance to the reference line is 0, so we don't have to add 0 to it. We got it. Okay. All right, area, help me out here. I don't have these numbers in my head, but I think we can do this pretty quickly here. Area for shape 1 is? Six times 2 is 12. Add 2 zeros. 1,200. Area for shape 2. 8 times 4 is 32 plus 2 zeros. 3,200. Okay. I'm sorry? The 8 from. Oh, did I do? I'm sorry. You're right. I did 80 there. You're right. My bad. I apologize. Good catch. So 40 times 20 is what it should have been. Sorry. So 4 times 2 is 8 plus 2 zeros. Let's change that. So this should only be 800. Good catch. All right, so we've got that. Now we just have to multiply across here. So okay, it doesn't want to pull up. So what is our 30 times 1,200? 36, add 3 zeros. What is our 70 times 800? 56, add 3 zeros. Pretty good. All right, now the calculator popped up. All right. Was there anything difficult about what we just did there? Besides my mistake? Yes.
Why is the first center 1200? I thought it was only 70.
The area,
Yeah.
so 20 times 60.
I thought the area was 800.
For the second one, the area is 800. Yeah.
I got my columns all screwed up.
Okay, that's all right. Yes. So for like shape 1, the YI would be if you have to look at the distance to the reference line and then halfway up the shape. So in this case, it's only 60 tall, so it's 30 is half the shape. Right in the middle of it, correct. Good. Yep. Okay. So we just did, basically right now what we did was across the top. But we didn't do the sum yet part. Okay. So we need to take the sum of the areas, and we need to find the sum of our YIAIs. Okay. So I can take 1200, 800, add that together, and I get 2000. I can take my 3600 and my 5600, and I get 92,000. Check my math. Am I good? And then it's just a matter of dividing. So I just did across here the YIAIs, right? I did the sum, which is this guy right here, divided by the sum of the areas. So what is 92,000 divided by 2,000? So if I take, let me just write it out here, 92,000 divided by 2,000, I end up taking away all the zeros, right? I left with 92 divided by 2, and I get 46. Oh my dear Lord. So what is 46 telling us then? What?
That is 46 and 3 and 0.
Yeah. So what we did is we basically took the two shapes, we found the centroid location for each of those shapes, we put it into this formula which does nothing more than takes the average of the shapes, and then it tells us that, okay, when I average the two centroid locations, I find out that about 46, which should be somewhere in this area, is where my centroid is located. Anything difficult about that? That wasn't too bad, right? It's pretty. It's not that difficult, right? It's pretty easy. Okay.